Well, the Manitoba Craft Council is inviting you on a journey through time, space, and alternate realities with Prairie Star Deck II. It's inspired by equal parts new and old, digital and analog, historical paintings, and science fiction. And it combines everything from fabric to yarn to bring viewers into an Afrofuturist world. Prairie Star Deck II is the work of Edmonton-based artist AJA Louden, who joins us here on Classic 107 to tell us more. Wonderful to have you on the show, AJ.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Wonderful to have you as well. So the title of your work, Prairie Star Deck II, implies that there is a Prairie Star Deck I somewhere out there in the world. What can you tell us about how these Prairie Star Decks came to be in the first place?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Inspiration can be, it can come from all over. And as artists, sometimes we just get struck with these bolts of inspiration that kind of supercharge us in some ways. And so that's the kind of state I feel like I'm in right now. I just have this story that has been kind of sent to me, and I feel the need urgently to share the lessons and teachings that I'm finding in it. So that's one of the things I'm really excited about with this work.
You mentioned the urgency that you feel to share these kinds of stories. Where does that urgency come from for you?
I mean, as paired with the inspiration, I think any storyteller knows that deep burning sense of this story needs to be told. It's not something that feels even audible to me at times. It's just a really animating force. So I think that's part of it. I also think that as humans, we gain so much from telling each other stories. There are so many lessons embedded in stories, and I think any good story has something to teach us, and maybe many things to teach us when we return to a story again and again. And so when you ask about Prairie Star Deck I and Prairie Star Deck II, there are many iterations of this story, and I'm excited to see where it goes and what unfolds from it in the future.
So this piece is, I understand, partly informed by the history of crafting in rural Alberta. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that history and where you intersect with it as an artist and a person living in Edmonton.
Yeah, absolutely. So in rural Alberta and many rural communities around the world, craft has become like a really important part of culture. And often it's because if you don't live in a big city, you might not have access to just be able to buy everything. Often you need to make it yourself. And in my mind, this is where it really comes from when we're problem solving in our own context. And so when I think about my own connection to craft, my mother had a sewing room growing up, and she'd make clothes for us and make goods to sell as well. So she was a small business person too. And so seeing her express herself in medium, and then also make these objects that made our lives more easier and more interesting and more meaningful, was a really important point of inspiration for me. And specifically, the tapestries that I'm creating are related to rug hooking. So they're tufted. And so they're related to this really long tradition of making these objects that have a certain day-to-day function, but also add beauty and aesthetic value and a sense of meaning into our lives. And it's something that you don't need to go into an art galleries all the time. These objects live with us in our homes. And so to be able to put them on a plinth or a pedestal in an art gallery and really celebrate the things that we think about and see every day, just reminds us that we can be surrounded by art as a practice and as objects all the time.
There's a real groundedness to the work that you're describing, AJ, as I'm listening to you, which is that it's based on things, like you say, that you can find in the home. You don't have to look far to find a rug, for instance, in your day-to-day life, nor the materials that comprise it. And at the same time, the descriptions that you give to these pieces, or the way that you talk about these pieces, indicate a very futuristic world. One quote that was associated with your gallery that I came across read something like this: "Giant solar-powered floral blooms burst from the motherboard ground. Bulbous floral-tipped stems taut with unreleased energy wait to zing from their frames." These are not necessarily images of things that you find in a rural Alberta home. So I guess my question about all this is, how does the future, the groundedness, the simplicity of the home nature of the rugs that you have been creating and the tapestries that you've been creating intersect with this sort of futuristic idea of the world?
Yeah, when I think about the future, I think about some things will be different, but so much will be the same. Inspired by history, and we can look back hundreds and thousands of years and find people that in many ways thought and felt like we do. So think about the future too. The technology might be a little bit different. There's going to be some changes in culture. Hopefully, power will be shared more equitably. The things will be the same. We'll still be human beings. And so I hope that some of the work reflects that, that there are plants that you can see today that are represented, they're existing still in the future. There are people that you can see today that are represented as if they'll still exist in the future. And so some of those ideas are just a line of continuity between now and what's coming, and making sure we have a pulse on that. And, it's up to us now to decide what the future holds for us and what we keep with in the present and bring to the future. Those are the seeds we're planting today.
So within all of this, it's not just a future that we are looking towards with Prairie Star Deck II, but it's more specifically, there's an Afrofuturist quality to all of this. How does this history of crafting in Alberta that has so informed your work here intersect with an Afrofuturist world that you've created where, as you just said, there's maybe a bit more of an equitable sharing of power that exists in society?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a lot of this work that's open for interpretation. There's lots of space for viewers to make their own guesses or help fill in the blanks. I don't have all the answers yet. One of the things that really inspires me about Afrofuturism as a movement is I grew up reading a lot of sci-fi, especially stuff from the 50s and the 70s and 80s. And there were big gaps in representation. There's lots I loved in sci-fi, but I didn't always see myself reflected respectably or honorably or with dignity or even with accuracy. And so one of the things I love about Afrofuturism is adding to that canon of sci-fi and making sure that there are more voices heard, because one of our big strengths is, as a species, is through the ability to solve problems from diverse perspectives. And when I look at the scale of the problems that we're dealing with right now, there's a wide variety of them. Our ability to handle these challenges is really going to be contingent on our ability to work together. And when we work together and we have different skills, we can kind of become more than the sum of our parts. And that's something I'm really excited about projecting into the future, that ability to become more than the sum of our parts.
Wow. You mentioned that you maybe won't have all the answers right away, but presumably that those answers keep on coming as you create Prairie Star Deck III and Prairie Star Deck IV, which I'm sure are forthcoming. This is a work, as we've said a couple of times now, very much based in Alberta stories. What do you hope that audiences here in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, take away from stepping onto Prairie Star Deck II?
I would say the stories for this work really aren't based in Alberta. For me, that provincial border is not that old, and these human-made borders change over time. So I'm less concerned with the national or provincial borders, and I think about the prairies as a place, and the land is something that draws natural borders. The mountains, the Rockies are a natural border. So I think about the land using those lines to demarcate difference or similarity. So it's really about the whole prairies. And so I hope, I drove this work from Edmonton all the way to Winnipeg, and I'll be driving back out to pick it up. And that drive across it was so inspiring. I came back from my trip to drop off the work out there, ready to make more new tapestries, because the prairies is such an important source of inspiration and beauty for me and for many of us. And so when I think about the audience in Winnipeg and Manitoba that will get to see this work, I hope they find a little piece of the prairies that they love and know so well reflected.
Well, that drive that you are going to be taking that will inspire you again is coming up very, very shortly. So Manitoba audiences only have a short while longer to view Prairie Star Deck II. It's on display at the C2 Center for Craft on Cumberland Avenue until June 26th. We'll have more information up at our website, classic107.com, and on the Classic 107 app. AJ Louden, thank you so much for joining us here on Classic 107 to tell us more about this incredible work.
Thanks for your great questions. Really good interview. Appreciate it.